So in the case of synapse, we have to first understand what is a synapse. Synapse is basically a junction between two neurons. So this is one neuron and this is another neuron. So at the place where two neurons are meeting, there is a junction. That junction is known by the name a synapse. So synapse is basically a junction between two neurons. And in a synapse, two types of neurons are involved. One is known as a presynaptic neuron. The neuron that is before the synapse is known as presynaptic neuron. And neuron after the synapse is known by the name postsynaptic neuron. So these are the two types of neuron, or we can say that the neuron which is contributing the axon is known as a presynaptic neuron, and the neuron that is contributing the dendron or dendrites is known as the postsynaptic neuron. So in a synapse, basically there is no electrical connection with each other. Here you can say, if you look at the picture, there is no close contact with each other. There is no actual physical contact with each other. There is a gap here, that is between two neurons there is a small gap. That gap is known by the name synaptic cleft. So between the presynaptic neuron and postsynaptic neuron, we are finding a space, and that space is known by the name synaptic cleft. Cleft means a gap actually. Now another thing about the synapse is that, so in the case of a synaptic neuron, the important thing that you have to remember that there is no physical contact and there is a space here. Across the space, certain chemicals are actually transferring, and these chemicals which are involved in the transfer of messages from presynaptic neuron to postsynaptic neuron are known as neurotransmitters. So here you can see that the presynaptic neuron is releasing the neurotransmitter, and they will be getting attached with the postsynaptic neuron and again triggering the next event. That is, they are again producing a series of stimulus which will be transmitted to the next neuron. So this substance, basically chemical substance, which are involved in the transport of nerve impulse messages are known as neurotransmitter. They transmit message from one neuron to another neuron. That is how the presynaptic neuron, postsynaptic neuron, synaptic cleft as well as the neurotransmitters are normally working. Then there are number of important neurotransmitters are there, and which we have to understand. And before that, there is an important idea known as the properties of synapse. One important property is that one-way conduction. One-way conduction means unidirectional conduction. That is, in a chemical synapse, impulse get transmitted from presynaptic neuron to postsynaptic neuron. That is, always this transmission from in this direction, from this point to this point, never from here to here. So always from this presynaptic neuron to postsynaptic neuron, never in the reverse order. So that is why it is known as a unidirectional conduction or a one-way conduction. So it is an important property of a synapse. Another property that is exhibited by the synapse is synaptic delay. Now in the case of a synaptic delay, you can see that there are certain synaptic vesicles are there, and they will be releasing certain neurotransmitters are there. Here you can see that. So in the case of these are known as synaptic vesicles, and inside the synaptic vesicles we can find neurotransmitter. So when a message is reaching the synaptic vesicle, it has to break, it has to rupture, it has to break and release this neurotransmitter, which has to travel across this space and attach it with another protein receptor. And for this 0.5 millisecond is taken. 0.5 millisecond will be taken. That act as a delay, and that is known by the name synaptic delay. So synaptic, because of the presence of synapse, there is a small delay across every synapse, and that is amounting to 0.5 millisecond, and that will be causing a small delay in the overall impulse transmission. That is known by the name synaptic delay. And here also you can see that this is a neurotransmitter, and this is the synapse is breaking, neurotransmitter is released, it is getting attached. So all this process takes a small delay, and that is 0.5 millisecond, and this is known by the name synaptic delay. Now the next event is the fatigability. Fatigability is another property of the synapse. So when synapses are continuously stimulated, that is, we are stimulating a neuron again and again, that several stimuluses are coming one after another immediately. After some time, what happens is that the impulse will not be responding. So if I am taking one class, after that another class, after that another class, after two classes nothing will be entering into your brain. The same thing happens in the use of a synapse. If you are stimulating it again and again continuously, after some time the synapse will not be responding. That situation is known as fatigability. So fatigability simply means when synapses are continuously stimulated, after some time due to exhaustion. Exhaustion means the complete utilization. That means you can see that there are certain chemicals are present. There is a store of that. If the entire quantity is finished, it needs some time to restock it. For that some time is needed. So if we are stimulating it before it is restocking, there will not be any neurotransmitter to pass through, and there will not be any response. And this situation is known as the synaptic fatigue or fatigability. So synapse is exhibiting a fatigability, and it is only a temporary phenomenon. Because why it is happening? Because of the shortage of neurotransmitter. When neurotransmitter is again recreated, this fatigability will be removed. Then another process is convergence as well as divergence. Here you can see that. What we are seeing is that this is 4 neurons, and these 4 neurons are converging into a one neuron. So during convergence, what happens is that, for example, this is producing 1 millivolt, this is another 1 millivolt. So each will be contributing 1 millivolt of strength. What will be the overall effect when it is reaching? It is 4 millivolt. So in a convergence, what happens is that several neurons will be opening into one postsynaptic neuron. So if more than one presynaptic neuron is opening into one postsynaptic neuron, we will see an increase in the strength of stimulus. That is known as convergence. Similarly, an opposite situation is taking place. Here several postsynaptic neuron here one presynaptic neuron is coming, and that is splitting into 4 postsynaptic neurons. So as a result, what happens is that strength of the stimulus will be reduced by 4. So that event is known by the name divergence. So the effect of the physiological consequence is that convergence will be increasing the signal strength, divergence will be decreasing the strength of the stimulus. So that is what happens during convergence as well as during divergence. Then there is one more property, that is summation. When a stimulus of subthreshold stimulus is applied, there will not be any development of action potential. Earlier I told you regarding all or none law. For a stimulus, it needs to be a particular strength, and that strength is known as threshold stimulus. If it is below threshold stimulus, no action potential will develop. So when a stimulus of subthreshold strength is applied, there will not be development of action potential. But if many subthreshold stimulus are applied at the synaptic region, effect of this stimulus will be added up, leading to an action potential. And this is known by the, see here you can see that this event is, see here we are applying a small stimulus, but that small stimulus is not sufficient to produce an action potential. We get immediately after, we are again producing another small stimulus. So both are actually below threshold stimulus. But if we are doing this process continuously, all these subthreshold stimulus will be adding with each other, finally producing enough strength to reach the threshold stimulus and producing an action potential. So that is what they are showing here. Here there are 2 small stimulus. When number of smaller stimulus are applied together, they will be adding with each other, producing enough strength to produce a overall action potential, and that situation is known by the name summation. So in this summation, smaller signals or smaller stimuluses will be adding with each other, producing an overall threshold stimulus, and that is known by the name summation. So these 5 are the major properties, and there is one more property that is known by the name excitation or inhibition. The impulse conduction across the synapse may either stimulate or inhibit a postsynaptic neuron. For example, you can see that here you can say 4 presynaptic neurons are converging into a postsynaptic neuron. What is happening is that the strength of the stimulus is increasing, so it will be stimulating. Here what is happening is one is splitting into 4. One signal is splitting into 4 signals, and what will be the effect? The strength of the stimulus will be decreasing. So that is known as inhibition. So in the case of either excitation will be taking place or inhibition will be taking place. So if there is a stimulatory influence, then there will be production of action potential and the postsynaptic neuron. And if it has inhibitory influence, there is no action potential generation in the postsynaptic neuron. So this is how the excitation and inhibition will be taking place. If we are increasing the signal strength is sufficient to produce an action potential, there will be an excitation. If there is no sufficient signal strength, there will be inhibition. So these are the various events which are explained in the properties of synapse. So from your examination point of view, this is an important topic. They can actually give an account of the properties of synapse, and you can also expand what do you mean by different type action potential or repolarization, or they can ask you an essay regarding explain the transmission of membrane impulse transmission in a neuron. So that's it all for today.